Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 4th and tonight's movie is The Lighthouse. This definitely appears to be one of the more artsy-fartsy movies I'm going to be watching this month. This was directed by Robert Eggers, the same guy who directed The Witch, which was one of the movies I watched in the very first Horror Nights back in 2017, and I didn't really love that movie, but it was definitely very well done in, its mood and atmosphere. This movie does actually something that The Witch did, which was that it changed the aspect ratio. The Witch was in a 4:3. This is basically in a square. And I think it's trying to get the same effect that it was trying to do in The Witch, which was to make everything seem very uncomfortable and cramped looking. In The Witch, it was because it was in a time where it just sucked to be alive. But in this one, it's because these two men are stuck on an island together. And unlike The Witch, this movie has two very high-ticket actors as the leads, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. From what I can tell, these are two lighthouse keepers who are stranded on the lighthouse island, and they just go crazy. This actually reminds me of a story from, I think, 1900 off the coast of Scotland of the missing lighthouse keepers on this island. I'll link a video in the description that goes into that story with a little bit more detail, but it tells a lot of the same sort of things with a storm and people just losing their minds, and at the end of it, they had completely disappeared. Their bodies, dead or alive, were never found. This seems to be a very moody movie from the trailer. It's all shot in black and white, and the trailer was just a sea shanty over top of Willem Dafoe losing his mind, which honestly is the best way to use Willem Dafoe. I don't know anything about what happens. I just know from a meme that I saw that you see Willem Dafoe's butt at one point, but other than that, I'm going into this blind. I'm gonna go watch it and let you know what I think. My thoughts on The Lighthouse are actually very similar to my thoughts on The Witch. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. To sum it up, this is a masterpiece in every respect besides the fact that it's thoroughly unpleasant to watch. It's like that with The Witch as well. With most horror movies, you get a little bit of establishment of things starting out at a good or at least not bad place, and then they slowly degrade as the movie continues. With both of the Robert Eggers movies I've seen, it starts out bad and then just keeps getting worse. For pretty much the entire movie, it's just the two main characters, played by Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. Pattinson's character is named Ephraim, I think is how you say it, and Dafoe's character is named Thomas. And I gotta say, both of them bring their A game. Robert Pattinson is a really good everyman in this movie, and Dafoe's character is just out of his mind from pretty much the very beginning. This movie does a lot of showing how an abusive relationship is set up and how it works, because Ephraim and Tom have a very abusive relationship, and by that I mean Tom is very toxic and abusive. I feel so bad for Ephraim throughout the entire movie. He's stuck on this island with this miserable old fart with a god complex who's disgusting and tells a lot of lies and abuses his power. And also, if anybody wants to see what gaslighting means, it happens in this movie. Very plain and simple, it happens in this movie. Robert Eggers seems to enjoy using animals as symbols in his movies, because in The Witch, the big animal symbol was that goat, and in this one, it's a seagull. A very specific seagull because it has one eye. And you could have a field day with the amount of symbolism in The Lighthouse. One big part of abusive relationships is the back and forth of being really nice and being horrible. It alternates between Tom being, nice enough, it's usually when they're drunk, nice enough, and they're, singing and dancing and having fun with each other, and then, pretty much on a dime, he will go completely psycho. Ephraim said that he didn't like Tom's cooking, and then Tom decided to go on, a 2-minute long rant cursing him in a very elaborate way, wanting him to die in a very specific way, and wanting his body to decompose in a very specific way. Things start to get bad when the boat that's supposed to pick, I believe, just Ephraim up doesn't show, so they just kind of have to keep going, and they don't really have enough provisions to last them much longer, and there is a huge storm. I was kind of under the impression that it would show both of them going insane, but Dafoe's character is insane from the beginning. The real descent to madness happens purely with Pattinson's character, and the slips into insanity are very well done. By the end of the second act, the entire movie is basically just a nightmare sequence. It was disturbing, it was gross, it was violent, it felt like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to be watching. And while there is a certain artistic talent to making something like that, it's not something I really gravitate towards. Like, Hereditary is a horrifying movie with so much hopelessness and stuff, but there were moments where you could, like, appreciate some things or, like, enjoy yourself while watching it, and I can't really say that about The Lighthouse. I feel like this movie was made to just sort of be a critical darling, and that's what happened. It was nominated for an Oscar. And while I can't appreciate it from a distance, it's not really what I'm looking for in a movie. And now let's talk about some spoilers. A very clear turning point in the movie is about halfway through. I already talked about the seagull with one eye. That seagull had been bugging Ephraim throughout the entire movie up until that point on at least 3 occasions. And he was cleaning out the septic tank, and I think there was like another dead seagull in there, which was like contaminating the water. And then the one-eyed seagull comes in, and then he just grabs it and just slams it over and over on a piece of concrete until it's dead. And earlier in the movie, Tom said that it's bad luck to kill a seagull because every seagull contains the soul of a dead sailor. And Tom sees Ephraim kill the seagull, so that gives him ammo to blame the entire storm and all the misfortune on him. Ephraim starts hallucinating, and there are 2 main, like, characters in his hallucinations. The first is a mermaid. Well, like, when he first gets to the island, he finds, like, a little statue of a mermaid in his bed. And the second is the foreman of his old job. And it's actually revealed his name isn't Ephraim. Ephraim was the name of that foreman. His real name is actually Tom as well. And he apparently really hated the foreman, and he saw like an accident happen in like the lumberyard. He was a lumberjack, and he just sat back and watched the foreman die. And he's like racked with guilt over it. And of course, that's something that Tom uses to hold over his head. And of course, because it's a horror movie involving someone dangerous, from the beginning, there's one room in the building that he won't let anyone else into, and it's the actual place where the light in the lighthouse is. And every night, he goes up there and strips naked and just stands in front of the light. But anyway, there is this altercation when Ephraim tries to leave the island on like a little boat, and Tom literally like destroys the boat with an axe, and then they have like an altercation, and Ephraim eventually does win. And then the last part of this movie I thought was very well done. He goes up to the little part where the light in the lighthouse is, and it like stops, and then like the door opens, and then you don't see what he sees, you see him, and he's like screaming his head off, and like the light gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and then he falls down the stairs, and then you see his naked body on a bunch of rocks being eaten alive by seagulls, and then the movie just ends. In case you haven't put this together, this is a very weird movie. I can give The Lighthouse credit for, like, showing a very believable, in-depth sequence of somebody going crazy. But there isn't much enjoyment one can get by just watching a bunch of characters be miserable for 100 minutes. It's good as an art piece, but not something that I liked watching. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow.